Hey everybody, welcome back to the 1v1 podcast. I'm your host Vlhadus, and before I mention my guest real quick, because this is something that me and him actually belong to, we belong to the podcast called The Burning Discussion. And my friend over here, MeMatt, we actually talk about a whole bunch of Ashes related stuff along with the host of the show, Extermicide, Creed, Ludo. We have a whole bunch of fun talking about all the Ashes related things. We usually have our podcast every other Monday. So this past Monday, we didn't have our podcast, but next Monday we will. And of course, you know, this guy is actually a really great Ashes creation content creator, MeMatt. What's going on, bro?
You're way too nice. I appreciate that. Doing
No,
well.
I'm not. Dude, no, I'm not nice. Like, here's my thing. I think everybody, including myself, all have room to grow. But analytically, I have yet to see a poor Ashes of Creation content creator. And it's such a shame because, again, like I know the grind, like and how the YouTube algorithm likes to screw people like us. You know, like we'll work really hard. Like the one video that I still love to this day, my favorite one is actually the one that's probably done the worst on my channel, which is the single player MMOs video. Has like 200 or 300 videos or views. And then the ones that I'm like, okay, I'll appeal to the algorithm and do like a top 5 or top 10 video, and then boom, you know, all craziness. Yeah, but I mean, at the end of the day, dude, like I love your analytical approaches. I mean, you left me a really awesome comment. Thank you for that, about my most recent video. And I think, again, you know, combat resources is something that really is going to play heavily into how combat feels overall. Because if the combat resource sucks, then it's not going to feel good to play that class. You know what I'm saying?
And especially depending on the type of combat that they kind of settle on once we get through the Alpha 2.
Right.
Because that's going to be a very big dictator for like how that resource management's actually going to work. So, especially with the way they've kind of described it thus far and what appeals to Steven. So.
Right. And you know, we're going to talk all the Ashes stuff, you know, we have time, believe me. But I do want to get into you. Like specifically you, like what is your MMO career look like? Like what MMOs have you played? Like what did you get lost in the sauce in? I know for me it was World of Warcraft for almost 15 years. Mm-hmm. So I'm just curious to see where you came from.
My first MMO was also World of Warcraft. I started back in the Burning Crusade.
Yes.
Played through Wrath of the Lich King. And then I kind of fell out as my friends kind of fell out because we were kind of ending our college careers and kind of moving on, so just kind of life got in the way.
Right.
And after that, like, because I had a real like niche for wanting to be a part of that world, and for me personally, like I know I always was more of a casual. That's kind of how I've really kind of described myself recently, just because I didn't really get into end game raiding inside of WoW. And what really appealed to me was just being in the world and being in Azeroth and, you know, going all over to the different places. Recently, just kind of playing through Classic during a playthrough that's going to be on my channel. Once I get enough pre-recorded stuff that I can feel comfortable kind of uploading that. It just really harkened on that world aspect and that niche part of the MMO genre that's kind of been lost in the sauce in modern MMOs. Other MMOs that I played really heavily in DC Universe Online on the console when it released on the PlayStation, because I was playing a lot of console games at the time. And that was really interesting because I played the controller class because they you know, gave the implication that the controllers would be more of like a CC class within group content. Unfortunately, it got metagamed into more of a battery, just mana recharger for the group. PE content, which isn't too much fun, but I mean the game overall is really fun, but it also is kind of a major poster child for the direction a lot of MMOs have gone, where it's been more of a dungeon grinder single player experience, because they have like solo dungeons that you can do, 2-player dungeons, 4-player dungeons, and then on up to their 8-person raids and stuff like that.
You're talking about
DC Universe Online,
right? Okay, just wanted to make sure.
Yeah, so like I've been out of that game for a while, and I kind of went back to my roots of playing Diablo 2. It's the number one game that I have the most playtime on. Just gothic, high fantasy experience is just something that I've been, really in love with for a long time. I mean, I love Star Wars. I love the sci-fi fantasy, so I've dabbled in the Star Wars, not Star Wars Galaxy, but Star Wars the Old Republic. I
Right.
dabbled in, played that for a little bit, but it just felt too much like a WoW clone. I've dabbled in Arcage just because I wanted to kind of get that experience once I found out about Ashes of Creation. So this is more of a recent dabble. I've definitely dabbled in a bunch of MMOs. It's just they all don't hit specific levels of the MMORPG that I feel are very important to the genre and why people play the genre. And I feel like a lot of people don't talk about these sort of elements as far as why these other MMOs haven't garnered the audience, and specifically why the MMO audience is older now, and we're not gathering and capturing those younger audiences that want to come and join the game. So it's a love-hate relationship because other than the vanilla World of Warcraft experience, I don't think any MMO has really captured the magic that it needs to. So.
Right. I think here's the thing, right? I feel like what's lacking in today's MMOs is a semi-hardcore experience, because we've had hardcore MMOs come out like full drop loot, super punishing, very grindy in the ways of like how you get mats. You need all these mats to make this really epic piece, but it felt so it felt great when you actually were able to. But again, I think the majority of people aren't used to that kind of a game. And the statistics show that no one's interested. Like, I mean, yes, you have your people that are, but there are very few and far between. And I think the reason why I advocate, and this is what I tell even a lot of the hardcore people that I talk to for Ashes, we need to meet in the middle. Like, there is definitely a middle ground between and again, I'm not saying that Ashes needs to be a casual MMO. That is not what I'm advocating for at all. I think if we treat the way, let's say, the average casual MMO like Final Fantasy 14, World of Warcraft, Guild Wars 2, and that's at the very far left of the spectrum. And then you have like WildStar, Mortal Online 2, all of the hardcore games. We really need to be like right in the middle. And I think that it'll sit very well with a lot of people. Because here's the thing, all the hardcore people know that no one's interested in hardcore players or hardcore games, because there's no one playing. Like, you go look at Immortal Online 2 in Steam, no one's freaking playing. So, I mean, again, and I think what most drives MMO players is population. If there's no one playing your game, you feel less incentivized to log into that game and grind out the hardcore stuff, because there's no one playing. And I think that's what WoW did so well, was when WoW came out, you had mammoths, Goliaths, like Ultima Online, Dark Age of Camelot, EverQuest 2. And WoW came out and it just grew. In like 2 years, it went from 300,000 players to all the way up to like almost 1.8 million players. And again, I think that's what Ashes needs to do. And I think initially, I don't think it's going to have that kind of a growth, because I think we live in a whole different era the way it was back in 2004, right? MMOs were, still, I think, very much a new genre, and the people that did know about MMOs, of course, played them, but the people, there was a whole other catalyst of people that didn't know anything about MMOs. Nowadays, we are very much used to MMOs. It is what it is. And I think, right, it's a dime a dozen. And I feel like with Ashes, we're going to get millions of players. Now, I don't think if we can adhere to the kinds of things Steven wants to do, I think we won't have a drop off like New World or even Lost Ark. I think we can actually retain a lot of people. But I'm really curious, what do you think Ashes needs to do to find that middle ground?
Well, for casual play, and specifically in my experience, when you log into a game and you're casually enjoying most of the systems, typically you have that one system that you really enjoy, that you really love about the game. I
Right.
mean, you can be really casual and just love professions. I know that's like probably the number one go-to for most casual players,
Right.
outside of maybe RP and stuff like that. But as long as Ashes really holds true to keeping the content in the open world, I think that's going to be a big driver for keeping larger communities to come into a massively multiplayer online experience to be within everyone else. Because with the direction of a lot of the modern MMOs that have gone, those dungeon divers, you
Right.
narrow down your group instead of the big 40-man raids, because those are tough to manage, tough to plan,
Balance.
tough to make happen. Yeah, and balance as well.
Right.
They've shrunk down the groups, and now you're playing with like 8 people, maybe just 5-man groups, and those are the core elements of the multiplayer, and you lose that massively. And if they can keep the content in the open world, you keep the content in the multiplayer aspect. So, and when I say keep the content, I specifically believe that the ambition of the project is to keep that minute little bit of end game content and actually have it sprinkled within the world. Because
Right.
when you think about like I always use World of Warcraft as an example, because I think it's a prime example of what was amazing, what captured the MMO genre as a whole, and how it's really like dropped off from what it was in yesteryear. But initially in the launch, you had the leveling experience was the game, and that's
Right.
why you had that small little bit. It's actually called end game because this is the game. So when you focus your next expansion, or your next expansion after that, or your next content drop here at the what players are doing at the end game, you miss a huge opportunity to actually breathe life into your game. So things like the node system, where you're leveling up different nodes, you can demolish different nodes, and you can level up the map on your server different than another server to unlock
Right.
more evergreen content. That's going to be a huge proponent to keeping the world and keeping the game, the big part, like fresh and new and reactive and dynamic. And then as long as all the core end game progression, your top end professions, your top end dungeons, your top end like castle sieges and your PvP experiences, as long as all those are intermeshed with the open world, Ashes I think is going to absolutely be able to retain, like you said, those casual players, because they'll be able to come in, play with a group of people, maybe risk going out by themselves. But there's going to be other players that are wanting to do that. So the natural course is to, play with other people, make friends. That's part of the multiplayer experience. And Ashes is definitely going to be able to do that. From what I've seen, as far as like the design intent and what they want to bring to the MMO genre, or at least take the MMO genre. It's a big part of Ashes that has me excited.
That's actually again a very good point, because you're a great analytical person, like I said. Because no, you're so right, because I would love if Ashes of Creation had its first expansion not actually expand any levels. And what they did instead was actually look at the current base leveling and what can we do to improve this experience? What can we do to enhance it, make it better, make some little changes here and there? But the endgame players, you don't have to worry about grinding 10 more levels or whatever. We're going to add new quests, new story, all this other stuff. And there's no hurry to like, oh, I got a level to do this content. No, you can start that content right here, right now. There's going to be certain dungeons that are going to open up maybe behind either a different node progression, or even, story beats, or whatever the case is. And again, I'm not saying that they'll never increase their level cap or whatever, but I do agree with you that the whole point of a person playing a massive multiplayer online game is at the very beginning, you're leveling, right? You're getting introduced to the story. The story is the game. Nowadays, people are so used to just getting to end game, getting whatever gear, doing whatever dungeons or raids, and that's like the little small section is what people want to concentrate on. And again, I'm not saying that we have to purposefully elongate the leveling, but I think too many people are too not immersed. What's the right word? Like, they find that end game is too important.
Hammered.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's just like it's too important, right? So everything else is irrelevant. My 1 through level 49 experience is completely useless. And I don't think it's going to be useless in Ashes of Creation, just like it wasn't useless in World of Warcraft. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
Like every single level mattered and you learned. Like that was the whole thing. Like when you were level 1, you were an idiot. Like I remember I made so many horrible decisions, got killed so many times because I thought I was a badass. Turns out I was not a badass. And like you find all that out. And I really hate how, and again, I think it's just our society, right, of doing things efficiently, right, is looking up the guides, min-maxing everything, figuring out the most optimal route to level, and yada 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 yada. Like, and honestly, like I don't even know if I'm gonna do that kind of content. I'm not saying other Ashes creators may do that kind of content because they want the clicks or the views,
They
but
for sure.
yeah, but I feel like I'd rather just show like what I think would be a really fun way to level. And maybe it's not the most optimal or whatever, but at the end of the day, like if Steven sticks true to, like, if you were to play at least 4 to 6 hours every day for 45 days, that was about similar to World of Warcraft, because it took
Yep.
me, and this was me playing a lot, and this was on a PvE, or actually no, a PvP server, when I first started playing. It took me about 2.5 months to go from 1 to 60. Like, by that time I was playing, Burning Crusaders were out. So by the time I got to 60, I still needed to do 10 more levels to go to 60 to 70. So I mean,
Yep.
it took a long time. But again, I didn't care because I wasn't rushing to the end game. I didn't know what end game was. I was just experiencing the game as the game
Playing
was. Yeah, I was just playing the
Mhm.
game. So I mean, I don't
Wild concept.
nowadays it is a wild concept, believe me. I mean, and you look at games like Lost Ark, New World, like in all these MMOs that are coming out, and I'm not saying that Lost Ark is failing, but we can clearly see that New World failed completely. Would you say that it was because it wasn't polished, there was no content, or was the game too casual? Like, what's your perspective on like why New World failed, and what do you think we can learn for Ashes so that will not fail?
So I have a buddy. He was actually one of the ones that was pushing me to make Ashes of content, because I introduced him to like the Lazy Peon video, and I was like, man, this is exciting. I know you played World of Warcraft. We didn't play together because we
Right.
didn't know each other at the time. And as I started making my Ashes content, he's like, are you gonna make stuff on New World? And I was like, absolutely not. And that's because the game
No offense to him.
was it wasn't a game. It wasn't complete. The systems were bare bone. The combat, to you know probably be a little too harsh on it, was very streamlined. The weapon systems for how their classes work was very streamlined, and that's a really big like pillar for me when it comes to RPGs. Is if you make the RPG element streamlined, it's no longer an RPG. You should
Right.
just take the role playing part out of it and just call it what it is. And it's just, I mean, I guess it's technically still an RPG because you can still level up different abilities and different classes, and you can change your weapon, but it's not really an RPG anymore.
Right. Right.
So the game that they released was released too soon. So number one, which luckily Intrepid every step of the way has said they're not going to release too soon.
Right.
Um, and depending on how long they need the Alpha 2 to run is how long the Alpha 2 is going to need to run. And that gives me a lot of hope behind the project and the team. Them not having like their financial backers down their throats being like, we need to make money off of this, and it's just Steven,
Right.
is a huge game changer for a studio like this. Because really it's a highly funded independent studio is like how I like putting it, where they don't need to get that back end money quite yet. I mean, obviously eventually they will. I think there's going to be a lot of business aspects to Ashes of Creation that people aren't ready for once it actually launches, but that's a whole different topic. So like New World, or like even when you look at games like Lost Ark, like a lot of that experience is streamlined, and you can't do that inside of an MMORPG. Like vanilla WoW, like we've talked about, worked because the tutorial wasn't handheld. I mean, this is my problem with a lot of games nowadays, is all the hand holding and the step by step, like telling you exactly how to do everything, instead of letting you just kind of have trial and error and you have to read everything to kind of learn the game. Because your starting area in that game, and this is just coming from my recent play experience, is like the basic elements of here's combat, here's questing. You go down a cave in most of the starting areas, and then it teaches you to explore, and then you go out into the next area. So
Right.
I've been familiar to Torin. You start out in Red Cloud Mesa. You do the bristleback quests and stuff like that. Then you move out into the larger Mulgore, and then the map's a lot bigger, and the quests take you in different areas. And you can go down different caves, and you can find rare mobs, and you can find, for the like chests and stuff at the end of the dungeons. It's teaching you to explore the world and teaching you that the game isn't necessarily just complete these quests as fast as possible. It's complete these quests as you're exploring. And you definitely lose that in MMOs nowadays, because the leveling experience has turned into literally just the tutorial for the game. Maybe some exceptions are like Final Fantasy, where you're actually going through a story during your leveling experience. But for the most part, I know like DC Universe Online, like the game didn't start until you hit to max level. Everything else was just a tutorial, even though they had a minor tutorial at the beginning of the game. So to bring it back to like New World and failing, and in terms of ashes, as long as they have an in-depth class system, as long as their augment system holds up to the potential that it can, and they don't, cut corners and not try as much as they can, which, seeing the content creator and how much love they've put into that, has me excited for how much love they're going to put into the augment system. As long as they do those core components, like our Alpha 2 experience jumping into the game and jumping into the first iteration of these systems, I think are going to be very exciting, especially for getting the hype train going to, I know the MMO community is really, really like feasting for something they can lash their teeth into. So
Me. I mean, yeah, no, I completely agree with your take. I mean, to be honest, like the one thing that really worries me is the 64 class system, because I feel like there's a huge misconception right now with a lot of people that are playing or that are looking at Ashes at a very casual level, and they're looking at it like, think of it like WoW, right? Like one class has 3 specs. You look at those 3 specs, they're completely different from each other. They're not anything like a fire mage is very different from a frost mage. A resto druid is very different from a feral druid. You can't look at the 64 class system the way you would look at specs in WoW, because that is not a fair comparison. Because really, there are 8 classes in Ashes of Creation, and there's going to be 64 flavorings, like sprinkles, hot fudge, like whatever you want to call it. And it was, I think, Redbeard, Super, he was a streamer for Ashes, and he's a great analytical dude too. He basically said that in WoW, each spec is its own class, really. And I agree with that. I mean, there is no base class anymore. It's like Lost Ark. There used to be base classes for Lost Ark, and they just got rid of the base class, and they said, hey, you're, a berserker, you're a paladin, you are this. So like in World of Warcraft, like if you were to go to retail right now, a Retribution Paladin does have some moves that a Holy Paladin does, but their rotation, their CDs, like their fundamental way you play is completely different. I don't think that's going to be the case with you looking at a bard and then being a bard, being a bard cleric, being a bard ranger. You're still fundamentally a bard. And that's what I'm afraid of. I'm afraid that there isn't going to be the depth that even myself and others are looking for with the classes. And I was really wanting to ask you this specifically, just to get your take on it. Do you think it was a mistake for Intrepid to do a 64 class system and not just do something that was like maybe like 13 classes, but all 13 of those classes are super unique, all have different abilities and rotations, and a very deep tree to customize? Do you think that would have been a better way to go than what they're trying to do now?
If their actual plan is to only have augments be primarily a fantasy change and change like the visual look, or like a very minor change, and not have like some element of a constructive change to the abilities, then absolutely 64 classes and saying there's 64 classes is a huge mistake, because when you choose tank, if it just changes the look of how you're tanking and all those 8 experiences are the exact same or extremely similar, then it gives no weight and no purpose to changing your class, which you're going to have the ability to do in the game. But if they actually do manage to really hold true to the potential, because I have a couple videos that I've really theory crafted hard on just some minor potential of how far you can take the system.
Right.
And I know I've gotten a lot of feedback of having too much hopium, and I'm like, they're already dreaming big. I'm going to dream big too. That's the only way we can live big, guys.
That's right.
But it would be a huge win if you chose your tank primary archetype, and then all the additional classes that you take are a different way of tanking. So that way you're always the tank, you're always the primary tank. It just changes, the mechanics of how you're tanking, changes maybe the stat that you're looking to tank. Maybe it changes the interactions or synergies that you can have with other classes that give you a better way of like gaining threat or gaining damage mitigation, of doing like grouping CC, those sort of things that you expect out of a tank inside of PvE group content. Then it's a huge W, and the depth of that system lends itself to all the other elements of the game, because now you have 8 different tanks that are tanking different ways, and you can either choose one based on a playstyle that you like. Like for example, perhaps like a rogue type augments will add in, because let me backtrack real quick.
Okay.
In my theory crafting for like how the augments might work, the only way they can work in a uniform way in this sense is to have every primary archetype needs to have something unique that they do and none of the other primary archetypes do. And if they actually want to have 3 to 4 different augments or school of augments for those, they need to really have 3 to 4 specific, maybe not completely unique at this point, but something that's like some sort of mechanic or interaction that's unique that they can trickle into the other classes. Because
Okay.
if tanks are the only primary archetype that can have damage mitigation, for example, because that's the only class that needs to have that. When you gain threat on a whole bunch of mobs and you take a whole bunch of damage, you it's just natural implication of combat design that you want a way to mitigate the damage on yourself because you're taking more damage, and then you also rely on the healer, and then you also rely on the damage classes to kill everything that's in front of you, and then that creates a class synergy or a combat synergy. So if the tanks are the only one that have damage mitigation, maybe like the rogues can be the only archetype that has access to stealth and maybe interaction with stealth. All right, so now we go back to the tank, the only class with damage mitigation. Maybe the stealth augments, or a stealth augment that you can use, because we don't know how many we can apply, how they're gonna apply to the abilities. But maybe it gives this tank access to stealth, and maybe it gives this tank access to like dodging and an increased dodge in its abilities. And now when it dodges, it gains like different aspects of threat generation, the damage mitigation, all the tanking things that it needs. But that simple thing of adding stealth and dodging to the class that it normally doesn't have, now you have a completely different tanking experience. And you can add that to maybe the ranger historically has like traps and those
Right.
things. You see that in Hunter and WoW. Maybe that's a unique school of augment that they have, and if you can add traps to the tanking kit, I think you completely change the tanking kit in a PvE sense, because now you can set traps to kind of predict and like prepare yourself for whelps coming in. All the whelps are coming in. Instead of
Right.
having to run over there to do all the threat generation, maybe as an off tank or something, you can just set a trap down. Whelps come in, they go into your trap. Now you got that threat generation. Now they're coming right after you instead of the healers in the back. So now you actually have sort of a ranged tanking experience. If they kind of really double down on this, and you know, one of the examples that I gave in like my cleric video was the shaman. Like what you would expect as a summoner secondary archetype being added to a cleric kit would be to summon something that does something for healing, just like World of Warcraft with their totems.
Right.
But maybe we can change that totem to look cool, like something like a giant rain cloud. So you augment if you remember in the Alpha 1, the big like shiny golden healing.
Right. The rainbow thing.
Yeah. Thing. Maybe you augment the rainbow into a giant rain cloud and it trickles down and it rains just from the summoner archetype. And perhaps, because one way that I've seen on the forums people describing, I think Golid, you had him on there on an episode. He had a really good take on like maybe it's like a DPS summon, like tank summon. I believe it was him. If I'm wrong, my apologies. His stuff's really good. Go read it anyways.
Yeah, his stuff is good. I think it was Golid that made that mention.
Yeah. So like a DPS augment, a tank augment, a heal augment, and then like a support augment like summon.
Right.
So if you add so no matter which summoner augment you add to the AoE rainbow heal, it turns it into a rain cloud. But if you add in the damage augment school, now you get to have an ability that you can click where you cause lightning to come down, and it can do multiple things. It can do healer things where it can like maybe add like protective buffs like shields or zap and recharge like mana to your allies, and then it can also do damage to the enemies. Like there's ways that they can really deep dive in how they specifically minutely change like these core abilities that you're going to use across the primary archetypes altogether to give 8 different play experiences, but it's still the same role and it's still using the same abilities. Like just a simple dot, there's numerous ways to adjust like how a dot does ticking. Maybe it does like a Doom where back in the day, it does like very little ticks, and then at the very end maybe you get a really big tick. I forget the exact way that it worked, but I know it was a fun ability to use. Or it's like Haunt, where it increases the damage of all the other dots. So now you actually exemplify a dot class, those sort of things. So if it's just flavor, they should have absolutely done just 8 classes. Here we go. Here's our augment system. If you want to look different, we have the augment system. But if they're going to go down these classes route, like the example that they gave, and I think it's the only example that I can find that they've actually mentioned, augmenting the fighter's charge ability with the teleportation augment class, whatever it's going to be from the mage, as a teleport to the charge. So from a gameplay standpoint, especially PvP, that's a huge impact. Instead of having your character, you're able to be CC'd during that charge, regardless of how fast it is. Your character's still on the map. It can still be CC'd. It can still hit traps. It can still have all those things happen, especially in kind of the big Zerg PvP battles that we've seen in Castle Sieges. When you add a teleport, now you remove all that danger, and now you just get right up as a fighter, and you're able to just battle it out, and you remove that risk of the travel time. And just from a gameplay standpoint, that's impactful. So even if it's just little minute changes like that are impactful to change the play experience, it's going to be a big dub.
What do you? Oh, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, what do you think?
Well, I mean, I'm just afraid they made a big commitment early on, and I would not be mad if Intrepid basically redesigns their whole class system, because I also feel like, how do you expand a 64 class system like with expansions, right? Because everyone looks forward to like the new class. That's like, I don't know how they're going to do that, because if they add one new primary archetype, that's 8 variations of that, you know what I mean? And now
and it adds 8 or more variations to the other classes.
Well, exactly, so my point.
You gotta add it on both sides of their chart,
right? So I mean, one new class is 16, right? Variations.
Yep.
So And I just think about it in the sense of longevity, and I just don't see that being good for Intrepid and also good for the players. And I think because the one thing that, like, if you look at DPS, there's a lot of variation in DPS. There's a ranger, there's a mage, there's a fighter, there's a rogue. But if you're a tank main, sorry, bro, you just got tank. That's it. Like, you know, and I think, and if you're a healer, well, suck it up, Buttercup. You just have to be a cleric, and that's that. And to be honest, I think of it in the WoW terms. I don't like warrior tanking. I hate priest healing. It's just not something I like. But dude, I love Mistweaver for healing. I can Mistweaver all day. I love Resto Shaman. I love Resto Druid. I love DK blood tanks. I love you know, like Demon Hunter, like with Vengeance Demon Hunter. Like but again, it's like I look at Ashes and I'm like, you don't have that choice. Like that's what I'm afraid of. It's just like, I think there's a lot of variation in DPS. There is definitely not variation when it comes to healers or tanks. And that to me is just a... Go ahead.
If we were looking at like the, I believe you said you are a really big paladin.
Yes. Paladin, man.
Which, you know, like the paladin is underneath the tank classes.
Right.
And I think you said that you're also looking at Templar, which is also kind of similar to Paladin in a sense.
Right.
You know, a little bit more retribution Paladin behind the Templars that we know.
Right.
But if that augment system does enough of changing how your healing kit works, like if they become, because adding the fighter secondary augments, I believe that's the one that Templars add to become a Templar.
Right.
If you're adding just, you know, ways to increase your damage of your kit, but also increasing your damage of your kit increases your healing capabilities from a melee standpoint, and maybe your heals not only trigger off of how much damage you're doing, but they also trigger from a player base standpoint, which might make it a little bit easier to heal like melee people and heal in the melee range. Like, is that something that would be that would change that healing experience? That you would expect a cleric to be able to have, I cast my flash heal, I cast my dots, I cast my AoE heal from the outside, to changing the mechanic of like let's go back to the AoE rainbow. Like instead of casting an AoE rainbow, you know, you take your sword, you smash the ground, and now you get the AoE rainbow around you, and then it also buffs up the damage that you're doing. You know, and it buffs up the damage your ally. Is that enough of a change for you to think that they can make 8 different play experiences within just that archetype?
Probably not. I don't think so. I mean, in my mind, I think the way, because again, it's really hard. It's all this is all conjecture, right? We're just theory crafter. We're just spitballing Ashes stuff. And I could be totally wrong. And I hope I am. Like, it's just, again, it's a worry that I have. With cleric, right? Because you have to be a cleric, and then your secondary has to be fighter to become a Templar.
Yes.
I hope that there's like 40 or even 50 or even 60 abilities for the cleric, but you can only have like 15 or 20 active. But the reason why there's so much variation is because if you want to be a hot healer, like a Resto Druid in WoW, you can choose those abilities, and that's your rotational kit. You can also choose a variation of major cooldowns. If that's how they're doing their base classes, I think I can find variation in it. Because what I fear, in like if we talk about it from a World of Warcraft perspective, Resto or even Druid class back in Classic had a shit ton of abilities. Like, I mean, and it wasn't viable to use all of them, right? You only use certain abilities for your rotation or for whatever spec you were basically catering into. If they can do that for Ashes, then I think there would be enough variation. I just fear that it's not going to be that comprehensive. And again, maybe that's more my pessimism. Maybe that's more of like being shit on from all the corporate entities of like, you know, Blizzard, Activision, and Bethesda, and insert MMO company here. But
stream hits.
Right. But I believe in Intrepid. You know what I mean? And again, these are all MMO players. Like, and I don't think it's very hard as an MMO player to be like, this actually sucks. Like if they're making something and they're playing it at the office, and sometimes, and again, not to hurt any other developers' feelings, like if they put a lot of time into a certain system or a certain class, but at the end of the day, if it sucks, like I am sure Steven will say it, I am sure other devs will say it. I doubt that they're going to have a shit class or a shit system for classes that doesn't feel compelling as an MMO player. Because again, I think what people really want is deep variation. And the only way you can do deep variation for 8 primary archetypes or 8 primary types is to have a shit ton of abilities, and you can't use them all. Like it's like Lost Ark in a sense, right? You got to choose which abilities you select, and the other ones are just invalidated. Like you can't use them unless you unselect that one, then you can choose another ability. Like if it's like that, then I will have faith, because if you have that in combination with, what is it? I think 3 talent trees, right? You're going to have a talent tree for passives. You're going to have a talent tree for weapons. You're going to have a talent tree for, I think, the class itself. Is that correct? Is that how?
Yeah, that's what was in Alpha 1. So
right.
Not implemented, but that's the initial design that they have.
Right. So, I mean, if that's all in variation and all in customization, then yes, I feel like a Templar could actually feel very different from another version of the cleric. But again, I just think that's just so much the developer, like that's what I'm saying. I think they make a big mistake in making this 64 class system, because I don't feel like there's a lot of room to grow with this. I feel like if they do end up nailing it, we're kind of stuck with this system for a while, like maybe 5 years or 6 years or 8 years. And because it's going to be very hard for them to like go outside of that. And I feel like if that is the case, we're either going to have to like do a whole bunch of balance changes, do a whole bunch of like eliminated abilities, adding in new abilities that didn't work. And I at the end of the day, I don't know if people are going to be happy or sad with that. I mean, I don't know. That's just my
fine with it. But also with like adding future classes, just kind of the way that I described, like adding that one unique utility or that one unique like mechanic from that other primary archetype. As long as they stick to something, I don't want to say that's simplistic, because it's certainly not, but it's simplistic in a sense of trying to visualize an augment system and how it can work across 64 different areas. As long as they stick to something like that, like if they want to add in a druid, for example, or maybe even a monk, these are both like very tried and true classes across MMOs. And specifically, I mentioned them because of Dungeons and Dragons.
Right.
These are really big classes that have a lot of abilities that people kind of know them for. And druids aren't necessarily just shapeshifters. There's also like the Celtic druids, and the magic, the nature magic. That's why you see kind of nature in World of Warcraft, that they had that sort of fantasy that they add to it. As long as you kind of stick to that, like monks have like a chi, like an aura. Like I haven't seen auras anywhere. Maybe the monk can have like an aura, and now we're implementing auras into the other kits through their augments, and now because like the example that I gave in like the cleric one, like cleric augments could be like protective buffs. So if they're the only class that can like give out shields, if they're the only class that can put up like immunities, if they're the only class that can cleanse allies, all those augments are going to be the same across the other kits. And as long as you limit, like you said, limit the bar and limit how many of those augments you have, then the weight of the choice of what ability that you're going to add that unique utility to really adds a lot of depth for me, because you can add it to any of the abilities.
Right.
And it's just a matter of which one is going to be more apropos to the content that you're playing. If it's large scale castle sieges, having large scale AoE stuff around your player base is going to be more beneficial to you, especially if you're on the front lines as a melee player. Whereas having like more like mobility ability, like maybe the ranger has specific like mobility, like disengages and backflips and maybe sprints and stuff that you typically see in those type of like ranger-esque classes. I just imagine Strider, Aragorn, just running around the battlefield and doing things that are superhuman, even though he's a human. Or like, I guess Legolas would be the better example. Like he can jump and like slide down the mammoths, things like that. If those are very unique, then you can add a whole nother row and a whole nother row, top and bottom on the tree, and then you can implement those unique things into the kit. Because the other thing that we haven't really mentioned with the augment system is there's other outside augments, from the race augments, from the social groups,
religions and stuff. Yeah,
the religions, the thieves guild, the scholars, all these things that are going to be node related augments that are going to be available. And then also like the weapon skills, like if you put enough points in the weapon tree, at least the design implication that I've read, you put enough in, you can unlock more abilities, and then that's added to your kit. And I feel like there's definitely room for a huge amount of variety, but the one thing that players are going to have to like remove from their old head, and this is something I wish World of Warcraft players would do every time I watch streamers or content creators and watch their videos. Like there's a bunch that I keep watching over the years. I haven't really played World of Warcraft. I keep watching all their stuff. It's balance. Balance isn't what you want it to be. Like go back to the you think you do, but you don't.
Right.
Balance in the terms of the way that I've seen Steven talk about it is some things are going to be really good in certain areas of the game. Some things are going to be better at other areas of the game. And I think that's a fine amount of balance. As far as like in a 1v1 sense, or like in a 3v3, 5v5, getting ganked by someone, there's going to be definitely some ways to balance abilities in that regard.
Right.
Like I think, God, I remember going through the wiki and like ultimate defense from the tank, like gave you and your party like immunity, like for a short span. And I'm like, well, that's like really super overpowered. Come in there, like a group of like DPSers behind you. You come in, you pop ultimate defense. You go in there, you nuke a whole bunch of people, and that's how you get into the castle on the castle siege. Yeah, but part of me says that's kind of fine, because if it's on a longer cooldown and you can't pop ultimate defense, ad nauseum, that seems like a fun gameplay experience to me. And ultimately, that's what we want in games, is to have fun.
Right.
So what do you think about balance?
Well, balance is not going to be something Ashes wants to do anyway. I mean, because 1v1s are all going to be the rock, paper, scissors. So, you think of, when I heard of that, I was like, huh? Like, what is that? But ultimately, in World of Warcraft, there is no such thing as balance either when it comes to 1v1s anyway. There were clear winners and losers when it came to certain classes. Like if you were a mage, like in classic WoW, and you were going against, let's say, like a warrior, like, I'm sorry, like you could be a really good warrior, but a really good warrior and a really good mage, the mage is probably going to win 8 to 9 times, out of 10. So I understand people have this like really like, oh, balance. It has to be completely straight across the board. Nothing can be greater than, but that's not fun either. Like you said, you think you do, but you don't. Like people want to feel powerful in certain ways, whether it's an AoE, whether it's a single target, whether it's a utility. Like you don't want balance. And, I'm kind of glad that Steven talked about it in a way that made me understand that, oh, we're not really balancing on a 1v1 scale. We're balancing when it comes to like an 8-man raid, an 8-man composition. And I think that's actually kind of cool. I actually don't mind that at all. I hope that they stick to their guns with it. The one thing that I'm actually not fine with that relates to overpowered or underpowered is damage meters. I've talked to a lot of my friends that, are very much against damage meters. And the one example I give over and over and over and over, and I'm going to keep saying it over and over and over, is Final Fantasy. Because the casuals don't care. They're like, no one cares. Like, as long as you don't like shout the DPS meter out or say it in chat or say it whatever, if you know what damage you're doing and they don't, because they don't care. Like, they're not there policing people to be like, oh, you don't have a damage meter. I mean, I don't know, right now there is like a whole debate right now with like certain add-ons with Final Fantasy, but hey, at the end of the day, they haven't cared for fucking years. So my whole thing with it is that if you want to belong to a guild that doesn't care about DPS meters, then join in a guild that doesn't care about DPS meters. Why police other people that want them? Like, it's not hurting you that they're going to have them, because if you're in a guild that doesn't want them, they're not going to be like, hey, why aren't you hitting this DPS threshold, or why aren't you doing this? No one's going to do that because you belong to a guild that doesn't do that. So you know what I'm trying to say? Like, it just makes no sense to me. So I don't know where you sit.
The ultimate end game for MMORPGs is finding friends to play with. If you find friends to play with, your experience will be vastly different than if from the player that doesn't want to try and find friends to play with and just pugs everything and goes in there in that casual sense, because you can casually you can find those. I know specifically because I played on an RP server and I never really RP'd much of anything, and that's why I'm really falling in love with like D&D right now,
bro,
because of those RP aspects and how you can like really kind of be an actor and really be this character, and that's what I love about like RPGs in general, but MMORPGs where you get to do that with other people. So
I just wanted to say this real quick and give a shout out to Anduin, because I've never been excited or even cared for the RP community or RPing myself. But for some reason, man, like I don't know, like I might actually not, and it's hard to, it's really weird to say, like if you want to try it, like I want to get into it a little bit. I don't know. I'm gonna play a Renkai orc. I don't know what you're very much interested in when it comes to the races, but I want to be a Garrosh Hellscream in Ashes, because I first of all think that the orcs look absolutely amazing. I think they're only going to look better with customization, because I know the one they show us has like little petite little, no, I want the freaking mammoth tusks. I want my tusks to go like up to here. Like I want to look mean. I want to look ferocious. But yeah, like I'm just really excited about that. And I actually want to be like a good person on my server. I want to be the person when they see me, people are like afraid, but they're also excited because they know, hey, I'm here to help. You know what I mean? Like I want to be like the John Wick in my server where someone killed my dog and shit's gonna get real when you see me because you killed my dog. So I mean, but yeah, like I don't know, and I also find that the RP community just has like, and again, maybe it's not this way, I'm not trying to speak for the whole RP community, but to me, I feel like the RP community is more casual in nature. I'm not saying that there aren't RP people that are hardcore. I'm sure they are.
Man, certainly are.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, hardcore in the sense of like gameplay mechanics. Like they're hardcore about like the being immersed in their character and all that stuff. That is definitely hardcore. But I mean, for me, and me being 35, I'm a family man. I'm married. I have a kid. Like I just want to chill now, dude. I played WoW for half of my life almost. Like I've done it all, dude. I want to chill. I really want to just relax in Ashes and just have a damn good time, man. I don't want to rush at all. I want to soak it in like I'm at a beach. I'm at a resort. I'm here and I just want to chill and lay back and enjoy my time. I don't want anybody to stress me out when it comes to Ashes. And I'm going to make my content for Ashes the way I want to make my content. And it's probably, I'm not going to go all hardcore, like I got to release 6 videos and talk about all this other stuff. Like I'm going to release my content when I release it. And if I miss the boat, okay, I missed the boat. I'm sorry, but I want to have a damn good time playing this game. I think if this does deliver the way I want and the way you want and the way a lot of people want, why rush this? Like literally, like we got the very thing that we've been asking for freaking years. Why am I going to rush this experience? It makes no sense. Imagine getting like having, I don't know, time with like an amazing woman. Are you going to rush that experience, or are you going to want to savor every bit of it? I'm sure you're going to want to savor every bit of it. Just saying. So I don't know. For me, I don't know. I think all the things that Ashes is doing is just really hitting all these notes for so many people. I mean, even just going over the character creator real quick. I mean, we did give our thoughts and bring a discussion a little bit about that. And we could talk about it right here, right now. I thought it was freaking brilliant. I was not expecting anywhere near that level of customization. And again, this is our first pass. This is probably past 15 internally. But dude, I was completely blown away. And the other thing I was blown away with is when Steven says this is also the same like level of polish that we want to give you guys for every aspect of Ashes of Creation. So I'm just really curious, like, what did you, I mean, thoughts on the character creator, thoughts on like what Steven wants to do when it comes to the aspects of Ashes? Like, tell me it all.
Before I jump into that, on the RP communities,
Hmm.
one thing that I think you're kind of what you're feeling with your little bit of a drive here to, get into your potentially dragonborn, Renkai orc.
Yes.
To pull out another D&D reference.
Mm-hmm.
The RP community, to me, has always exemplified a lot of the core niche that MMORPGs are unique compared to all other gaming.
Right.
That live experience, you can kind of immerse yourself in the world. You can really get down and dirty with what you're doing as much as you want. And that's what the RP community was always for me. I could go around and, "Yar, here we go with us," do my little bit of pirate stuff, which I definitely plan on doing. But I think that's what you're feeling is I don't want to say personify. I don't want to sit there and like paint a giant picture, but
Right.
they definitely encapsulate a huge portion of what makes MMORPGs cool, unique, and fun to play.
I agree.
In terms of character creator, I have never been one to give any care to the character creator, to be honest.
Me too. I've never cared. I want to, but go ahead.
I'll say the caveat is DC Universe Online, just because I was creating comic characters for a comic world that my best friend and I kind of have some characters for. We used that to do that. But I was always at the standpoint that I'm going to add armor to me. I'm probably going to wear my hood or my helmet. I'm not going to see my face. As long as you give me some long locks, it's me. it's close enough. But there was a moment in the character creator where all of that changed for me. It was when they placed the tattoo on the body the very first time.
Yes.
And he just zoomed it huge, zoomed it small, started moving it around everywhere, and I'm just
Oh
like,
my god. Yeah.
whoa. Like,
Yeah.
I actually popped in the chat feed. I was like, you actually impressed me. Like,
Dude.
you blew me away with that. Like, this should have been done 10 years ago with shitty graphics. That's like let alone the graphics we have nowadays. Like, it's laughable. It reminds me of that video that just went viral about like the SoCal killer. Like, I forget the creator.
Oh yes, from WoW.
Yeah.
Like, yes, I has been watching it. It was good.
Yeah, he did this amazing video that had this amazing story, and latched it to a bunch of fake stuff that happened. And then he's like, the reason I did this is because if I can do this, they can do this. And I was like, 100%.
True.
And I think that's really what encapsulates what I see with the character creator that Ashes has presented. Is like, wow, they're actually thinking outside the box. They're actually trying to push the systems the way they should be doing, the way players have been asking them for. And this is the first time, because I had no real idea what race I wanted to play for my main character. I mean, I want to be a summoner. I really hope the necromancer is super cool and we can customize it. I actually have a really outlandish hopium build video where I discuss the possibilities of being able to have like pirate like crewmates as my ghosts, and I'm a ghost summoner, with like, perhaps like the cleric augments make them ghosts instead of like ghouls, and then I have like my crew is who I'm summoning to do my stuff on my ship, and there's my class fantasy. I don't need an alt to have a pirate fantasy. I can be a ghost necromancer pirate captain on the seas of Era. Like, that sounds really cool to me. That's really we're putting on tinfoil hats type of hopium behind that.
I don't think we're gonna get that level, but I mean, it would be nice to have that variation for necromancer.
The potential is there. The potential is there.
Mm-hmm.
If you've ever talked to a conspiracy theorist, like, just having the potential is enough to really get people going. But this is the first time with the character creator that I actually want to go in and make me in game. If they can make the bald man himself, if they can put, Asmongold, I love Asmongold. If they can make him and put him in there as like a little like off joke, I can make me and I can be me, and then I can RP as me in the world and have really good time. And then I can also build these other class fantasies. You know, maybe I want a Nakua pirate that is a shipbuilder and, you know, loves Ernest Hemingway and loves The Old Man in the Sea, and that's his life. He's just going to go out there and go fishing for the big fish. You know,
Right.
I can design a character around that. You know, have like an old man Nakua that's seen some shenaniganery in his day, and you know,
Is that what you
goes
want to be?
to Ludo's Tavern. I mean, it's a potential fantasy that I've designed. Like I said, I've been really getting into D&D, and a lot of the characters that I've been creating in D&D, you know, are characters that I might want to see come to fruition within Ashes of Creation. So
Right.
that is an idea that I've had.
Have you been playing
But,
Pathfinder?
you know, I play just the regular, what is it, 5, whatever, the edition 5. My best friend's got the books. I don't have the books.
Oh, okay.
We do online like campaigns that he kind of does up in his free time. We haven't
Right.
really. We keep planning. He's an accountant, so this was like his busy season.
Right.
We keep planning on sitting down and doing like a major campaign, and he's like, Matt, like it takes so much like to build these like tiny little campaigns for us to do together, and I'm not ready. I was like, you need to be ready. Let me get after it then. I'll build the campaign. You can be the dungeon master after that, and we'll get a whole bunch of people to come in and throw some shenaniganery at them.
Right.
So, yeah, whatever the 5e, I don't think it's Pathfinder. That's all the books that he bought. Like we
Right.
have deep dived pretty heavy recently.
I
A
pl-
lot of go ahead.
No, I played D&D back in the day, man, and honestly, like, one of my buddies, Bobik, he's been playing D&D with a couple of his friends, and I'm like, man, I don't know, I would love to get back into D&D, but you need a good dungeon master. If you don't have a good dungeon master, it's just done. Like you're not going to go very far. It's going to take even longer because now he's having to like reread things or redo things because he messed up. It's all about the dungeon master, but at the same time, I feel like the character creator, like I had the same moment too when he popped, like, and it's just, dude, it just shows how deprived we are as an MMO community for like decent content, man. It's so sad. Like when Steven always talks about the whole beaten dog analogy, it's like we're grateful just to have edible food. And it's like, you know what I'm saying? Like it's terrible, dude. It's so bad that we're at this level where we get this excited just to see like a 2001 technology of just copy or like plop and place, enlarge, delarge, move where you want. But all the procedural, you know, tattoo placements, like if you go to New World, the tattoo's just gonna go where it goes. You can't move it, you can't change it, you can't expand it, make it bigger, whatever. Like it is what it is. But we've had that in MMOs for so long. Like, and it's just to see something that it seemed so intuitive that Intrepid was just like, oh yeah, pop, you know, and it was just like, but again, like I feel that the level of character design and customization is going to be really ridiculous. And I'm really excited for it. I'm not going to be a human personally. I don't want to, I mean, maybe, I don't know. Like if I go on another server, maybe I will do like a KLR human and try to do, or I think my skin tone's more Valoon. I don't know. Maybe I'll do a Valoon human, but you get that olive color tan, you know?
Yep.
But yeah, dude, I don't know. Like I just am excited for the overall immersion that this game is going to be, because I think what's been happening is that we know we're playing a game. And when I played WoW felt more than that. It felt bigger than that. And I think I don't think it was because I was a kid. I really wasn't a kid. Like I was like 20 something, you know, I was like an adult,
College.
you know? Yeah. Like, you know, but at the same time, like it just felt like I was stepping into something bigger than myself. And I was also playing with a lot of people and a lot of my friends too, that felt really good. And even meeting more people just organically, because there was no group finder, there was no anything, and you were just being immersed in the game. I just feel like that sense of mystique is lost now. Like everything is a race. Like you just race to end game. You know, for New World, people were racing to max level. People in Lost Ark are racing to get to their certain item level or whatever the case is. Um, it just, the whole mystique of it is gone because the developers made it gone. There is no path of just enjoying your leveling and getting immersed in the story. That's why I really love Final Fantasy a lot. I don't really do its dungeons and its raids, but man, dude, when I play Final Fantasy, I'm immersed in the story. Like I feel like I'm watching a movie play out, and my character's like the main character. And I just miss that. Like I want more of that. But the one thing that in Final Fantasy that I don't get is class customization. That's the one thing I feel is super important to me. When I play a class in Final Fantasy, it is what it is. There's no talent choices. There's no to augment anything. Your rotation abilities is just, it is what it is. And it's like, and they have some really fun classes, don't get me wrong. But at the end of the day, it's just a carbon copy of what everyone else is doing. And I just don't find that engaging, in my opinion. So I do hope that Ashes does go in a way that does really offer a sense of customization when it comes to class combat. And I'm going to ask this question, probably already knowing what you're going to say, but where do you sit when it comes to the whole action tab debate or hybrid?
Hybrid is going to be the way to go.
Okay.
As a gamer, so there's benefits to both of them.
There is.
And specifically, I say hybrid because there are certain types of skills that lend themselves more to action, and then there's certain type of skills that lend themselves more to tap target, and then there's also certain type of play styles. If you want to have any type of like melee healer, you're gonna want to have those player-based AOE's, and those player-based AOE's just work a lot better from an action standpoint. So like healing in DC Universe Online, a lot of the tab targeting part is a lot of it's taken out, and they really kind of streamline the system to you click the ability and it heals specific people in the group or specific uh like health levels in the group, and they make it a lot easier in that sense. And I don't want them to go that route to where it makes it a lot easier. um More specific that they gear the healing to like what your character's really there to do. That's why I brought up like in that cleric video, like the Templar should be a melee healer, and you can make it a melee healer. But also an example that I gave for the Apostle, that's adding the tank secondary augments to the cleric kit. Now tanks normally are like melee driven classes. um I actually can't really think of any game that has any like actual range tanking, where they actually want to stay at range and not take hits, and like maybe play a cat and mouse game as far as the tanking goes. That'd be really weird. If there is, let me know down in the comment section below so I can check it out or at least watch a video.
Right.
um but if it's a melee centric healer that's adding tank augments, and in this, like in my example, adding like some sort of like damage mitigation to the healer's kit. Now, how can we exemplify that? Now, as a healer, you don't necessarily want to get hit, but as a tank, you do want to get hit. So maybe this healer can like put a buff on themselves, through some sort of abilities or through this ability that adds damage mitigation to their kit. So when they are hit, they heal out to group members or heal out to members around them, because now they can be melee, and they can actually be a really dangerous melee healer, especially in PvP content, because you don't necessarily want to focus fire that. Especially you don't want to focus fire that if they have melee DPSs around them.
Right.
And it changes up that play style by changing up how those heals work. So when you're in the melee range, it's really tough to tap target and click different people. And I definitely don't like the play style of being able to click their their nameplate, and then now you're just nameplate healing instead of actually engaging in what's happening on the screen, besides moving out of the fire, that sort of thing. Or hey, this boss is gonna smack down over here, let's go over here, out of like the area that tells you, like Final Fantasy. You avoid the mechanic. Now you're engaging that play style with that type of healing. So melee healing, a lot more player based, like you place the heal underneath you. Like Guild Wars 2, I've been playing a lot of Necromancer, and they have like a tiny little ability on their staff weapon that you can place down anywhere you want. An ability that does, I think it does. Man, what else does it do besides? I've been playing it a lot. I don't even know what it does. I just click it.
I don't know, man.
But
I've been playing
it
Necromancer a little bit, but not too much.
it has a minor heal on it. So if you just take that kind of like mechanic to where you can place it anywhere,
Right.
but you can also place it by like the ability that you smash, or maybe you have like a leap ability that you see like barbarians have in other different games, and like where you crash, like you're coming down like a paladin, for example. Maybe
Right.
it has a leap ability where they crash down, and then right there, that's how they do their consecration instead of just whoosh consecration around them. I think
Right.
those would be really cool mechanics to add to it. So, and those are the type of action abilities that I want to see. You click the button and it goes a direction that you go, and then based on where the cadence of you positioned your player, especially in PvP, that's going to be important. That's like one of the weird nuances that I've been learning leveling up a shaman is I don't want to just pop my totems anywhere. I
Right.
want to pop my totems where that mob that's coming down the hill, or like the group of like 3 mobs that are coming down the hill isn't going to walk up, and then my fire totem's going to go, hey, we're going to attack you.
Right.
And I'm in a big thing of trouble. So now I want to place my totems here in a specific spot that is in correlation to the combat that's happening on there. You know, target really lends itself to kind of slower combat, and it's felt really good playing classic TBC and having that slower combat as I'm really trying to immerse myself in the world. So I don't want to lose that. Like I dabbled in BDO just a tiny little bit, and as I'm like learning the combos and splashing around, I didn't feel like I was playing a game where I could be immersed in what I was doing. I was seeing these really big flashy animations doing a bunch of AoE damage, and I'm like, that sort of gameplay style lends itself so much better to an ARPG and the isometric downplay camera angle
Right.
than having third person right behind you play style. I'm like,
Right.
that I don't think that's going to really I feel like people don't give enough cadence to like what you're actually watching and what you're actually doing. When you're
Right.
doing a bunch of AoE mob stuff like in BDO, like it makes sense, but to me it doesn't like visually engage me in the combat. I mean, some people might have different opinions on that.
Oh, for sure.
So that's why hybrid, those like flash heals and stuff, especially from a range standpoint, that's a lot better to be able to tab through some stuff, or even like click on a nameplate on the screen so you can flash heal really fast, really quick. That gives a little bit of a skill gap between someone that has the hand-eye coordination and the dexterity to be able to maneuver their character, or just clicking on the mouse
Right.
to get the proper heals off. There's a lot of skill behind that, and you don't necessarily get that if everything is all action based. You can't really have that. You have to have a system like DC Universe Online where it specifically cadence a heal to a like a health pool level in the group, and
Right.
that's not going to be engaging enough for healers specifically within the game, in my opinion.
I just think they need to do a variation, right? I think in WoW at its early game, right, it was a lot of click a raid icon and just heal, right? But now there's smart heals, there's positional heals, there's direct heals, there's AoE heals, there's beacon heals like the totem you were talking about. There's a whole bunch of variation. And I just think if you have that variation, it's going to feel very hybrid, because you're not just clicking a portrait and healing them. Maybe you only want to do that for your big single target heal. You're the tank's going down, all the smart heals are going out, you're doing everything, blah, 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 blah. But then you need to do a large heal. I just think having a little crosshair is a terrible way to do that, personally. I see it in New World all the time, and even healers in New World don't like to heal in New World. You know what I'm saying? And again, like, because there's only going to be one true healing class in AOC, it has to be fun. It has to be engaging. And I just feel like the same way we want to make melee engaging with more action-oriented abilities, we need to have healers be in a good spot too. because we need healers. Like, we need people that want to play healers. I think that's the one thing a lot of times in MMOs is that there's not an incentivization to heal or to tank. Now, before we get off, I do want to talk about this because I think this is also a very important subject to talk about. What do you feel about DPSing as a healer for leveling, or DPSing as a tank for leveling? Traditionally, it always sucked. You're not an actual DPS, so you do crap damage, but the trade-off is that you could heal, or the trade-off is you can tank. I think that's kind of a dead thing in 2022, personally. I think especially for 8 archetypes, I honestly wouldn't mind if they were just treated as a DPS with another, like, also being a healer, or also, you know, I just don't want them to suck when it comes to any kind of solo play. You know what I'm trying to say? Because it always sucked in Classic or Burning Crusade.
Yeah, I'm having that that thought as I'm leveling up my shaman, because I really want to level up via the restoration tree. I think I got that right.
Yeah.
Yeah. But also, I don't necessarily want to only relegate myself to dungeon content for leveling. I want to level up on a solo experience.
Right.
And having the hybrid of being able to choose abilities between the two or 2 or 3 specs does kind of give you a little bit of cadence to do that. And I definitely think this kind of lends itself back to Steven's comment of balance, and not everything's going to be good for every part of the game, and specifically for the classes. Because if you add in secondary augments from a damage primary archetype to, like, the clerics or to the tanks, and it actually does increase your damage in a specific way, then those kind of lend themselves to being the primary leveling mechanics that you'd want to level with as a tank or as a cleric. So, you know, adding those fighter secondary augments, the rogue, ranger, mage, if they add enough damage to the kits where you're kind of a hybrid, you still are a primary healer, you can really outlast the damage that's coming in, but you're also increasing your damage. It slows down, and hopefully, I mean, this comes down to numbers and math. But it should slow down, like, the leveling experience compared to, like, what I'm going through with Classic, where if you only take the healing talents, all you're really doing is, I'm doing, like, the bare minimum amount of damage that I can do, and I can out heal the damage that's coming in. And that sort of, like, number cadence is always going to be slower than out damaging the damage that's coming in, and that's how you survive. Because, you know, increasing damage increases kill time, increases you being able to move throughout the world. So if you take, like I said, if you take the healer kits and you make those class augments meaningful within, like, what you're actually adding to it. So if you're adding those rogue secondary augments and it actually does increase your kit, I don't think it's going to be a problem leveling up as cleric or leveling up as a tank within the game, because you don't need to double down, like, take the tank with the tank secondary augments. You don't need to do that to make your tank kit good. So when you're adding those damage augments to it, now you just increase the cadence of you being able to solo. You know, you take that kill timer and you move the needle up a little bit. And it all comes down to numbers, because maybe, you know, like, what's a good spot to move it up to where you're still tanking, but you're doing enough damage to kind of keep moving along? You know, is it halfway up? Is it 3/4 of the way up? Is it just a quarter of the way up? Because that's going to affect those type of classes in PvP. That's going to affect those type of classes in dungeons and going up against these dragons and stuff like that. It'll be real interesting when Alpha 2 comes out, because that is going to be something. Because I know from just reading the forums and just kind of getting a bunch of comments on my videos, there is a huge portion of the vocal community that want to play tanks and want to play healers. I don't know if that's just the niche of these really, like, hungry MMO players that are hungry for that type of experience. We're always hungry for supports, and then more of the casual crowd like playing DPS. I don't know if it's that, but I know that from my experience, the core Ashes of Creation community right now has a lot of tanks and healers. And if those leveling experiences are not fun, or are too slow, or as as we kind of have said, archaic in that aspect of the game, then that's just an indication that the class augment system and the class system is going to be a problem long term for the health of the game.
I mean, and it just kind of go to your point with the leveling, right? So like, I mean, I understand from like level 25 we can have a secondary augment. I just don't even want the 1 to 25 experience to suck. Like if you're just
Yep.
being a straight primary tank or a primary cleric, I don't want it to feel like playing a mage is better, playing a ranger is better. Like, and again, I also know that this is also going to be a very group oriented game, but I also understand too that people are going to try to play by themselves. They're going to try to go out and do things by themselves without their friends. And I don't know. And again, this kind of plays into the whole, what do we want Ashes to be? Do we want it to be a group based game, or do we want it to be possible to solo play? I would like this game to be possible to solo play, but with the incentivization to group play. That's my thing. There's a lot of games that don't even have the incentivization to group play because there's no reason. It's more efficient just to play by yourself. I want Ashes to be the opposite of that. But I also understand that people sometimes, you know, with their work schedules, their life schedules, maybe they can't play a lot of times with the friends or whoever they want to play with. I just don't want that tank experience or that cleric experience to be so terrible that their numbers are just garbage when it comes to trying to kill a mob. And it takes like 45 seconds to a minute to kill a mob when it takes 10 seconds for a ranger or 10 seconds for a mage to do it. You know what I'm trying to say? Like that's really what I'm trying to say. So Steven, please give some love to the tanks and clerics. But you know, yeah, go ahead.
Can I ask? It's kind of a point and then kind of a question,
Right.
because, like you said, 25 is when we're going to get that secondary augment.
Right.
How do you kind of view? Because one of the big issues that I foresee, and I really hope during the Alpha 2 we really get to test this, is the impact the node system is going to have on the leveling system, especially for players that start, 3 months down the line. They didn't start Ashes of Creation right at launch. They start 3 months down the line. They're at a server that has I forget if it's like 5 or 7 max Metropolis nodes you can have, but those Metropolis nodes are already in place. They're already active. They're already running, and you're leveling up your character, through these different quests and stuff. Like, how is that going to impact the 1 to 25 experience? Because one
Very true.
answer I could make to making the 1 to 25 experience not suck for tanks and not suck for clerics is make it not necessary to have roles within that leveling experience and within those questing. But then after you get access to your augment system and after you get access to the different tools that you can kind of apply to your kit potentially, we still don't know how the augment system is. I know I keep talking about how I would like to see it, but we don't know how it is. Definitely need that disclaimer. But after we're able to add those utilities and start crafting our character around that, then you start making more group oriented quests. Maybe then you start, because I know level like 10 or like maybe level 8, the Hogger quest opens up as you're leveling up as a human,
Right.
in a classic World of Warcraft, and you're not taking down Hogger without a group at that level or without like crazy, ridiculous gameplay elements, whatever. It's a much easier with a group.
Yeah,
That's
very
why
much easier.
it's a level 11 mob. You can get the quest, you can go and attempt the quest, and you can do it with a group. And that's really early on in the I want to call it the tutorial experience of World of Warcraft Classic. But really, group play and that incentivization for group play doesn't come in until you're doing Dead Mines, until you're doing, to be honest, like Waylorn Caverns on the Horde side. That's really when that group dynamic kind of comes in. But on the same token, like as a shaman, I have seen videos of people doing these lower end dungeons where they're like, I'm the tank, I'm the shaman, I'm able to kind of do these normal things and use my totems to kind of go in and out of like the damage, and that's how you're mitigating damage, is you're using your slowdown totem. I don't know if you've ever seen those guys. They're pretty wild figuring those things out. But you can tank those lower end dungeons as a non-tank class, and that's kind of which drives home that point of if you cater the initial launch leveling experience of 1 to 25, where you don't necessarily need those, how is the node system going to really affect that leveling experience? And that's something that I'm really excited and also nervous to see happen for Ashes of Creation and Alpha 2.
Well, so a lot of people, and again, this is all conjecture, right? We don't know. People say, oh, well, level 6 nodes are going to scale up to the players. Well, that's impossible, because if that happens and the starting area, as soon as you spawn there as level 1, well, there's a bunch of level 50s around you. Good luck. You know, that's not going to happen. I am sure what's going to happen is that the starting area nodes, if you get to a tier 6 metropolis, it's still going to probably have the same monster types as it did when it was a level 1 monster. You know what I mean? There's probably going to be ones that, as you start expanding and start leveling up those nodes, those monster types will probably start increasing in level, right? That's the way I would think in my mind. I mean, Steven's a smart dude. I am sure they're going to have all that stuff hammered out, but I'm pretty sure that each node on the map is going to have, this is the highest a mob will scale once, you know, tier 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, blah, blah, blah. And as they go deeper or whatever, that's just how it's going to be. Because again, I think there's only going to be 4, maybe potentially 5 starting areas for new characters to choose to pick. And I don't think any of those starting node areas are going to, even at tier 6, I think they're still going to have the same mobs. Like, you're still going to see level 1s, level 3s, level 5s, or whatever. But I also think what's really smart about that is that you're going to have high level players to help you. So if you're playing 4 months into Ashes of Creation, you're popping as a level 1, you don't know anybody, you could just have like a level 40 or a level 37 or a level 26 whoever, because they're at that node, and be like, hey, I need help killing this group quest, can someone come and help me? It's gonna be a lot easier to have someone help you, when back in the day we had to get up a group of 8 to kill that thing. You may only need to get a group of 2 or a group of 1, you know? And
Good point.
And I think that's going to actually be kind of cool for those entry-level people, and it's going to be a great recruiting tool as well for guilds. I mean, again, if Intrepid does that smart, it could be super beneficial for the entry-level people getting populated into the world, but also beneficial for high-end people to especially go back to those starting areas because of certain, whether they place their guild, you know, housing area in that node area, or just whatever the case is. My whole fear was when people talked about, oh yeah, no, the nodes are going to scale to like when tier 6, everything's going to be like high end level. I'm like, that's not how it's going to be. I am pretty sure that they're going to cap off the you know, the mob types in certain node locations. It's not, I mean, I am sure that a tier 6 node, let's say on the very bottom south of the map, when that goes tier 6, I'm sure that those monster types will be level 50 or 51 or 49 or whatever. Definitely not the starting areas, but I do think starting areas are going to be very interesting, and I think they're going to even become more interesting as time goes on, as those nodes evolve and grow and grow and grow. What I do think Intrepid should do, though, however, since everyone is going to centralize in those starting areas, you need to add a bigger degeneration experience to those starting areas so they don't level as quickly as other nodes. Or you need to have a way bigger XP pool for the starting nodes comparatively to other nodes that are elsewhere, because I think how that'll happen is it'll force people to spread out. You know what I'm saying? And I think that's what, you know, the whole variation is going to come from, because again, my whole fear too is min-maxing the whole, oh, okay, well, it's going to take 1.3 billion XP to do this and blah, blah, blah. And you're going to have people mapping all that nerdy stuff out, and that's going to happen. Fine. But I think for the starting areas, I think it would be kind of advantageous too if there was some really cool perks where it's like, dude, a tier 6 in this note location would actually be kind of cool, and this is why. You know, whatever X reason is. But again, they can't be also too compelling, because then people will just forego and just be like, well, it's worth the 1.3 billion. It's a freaking tightrope. I don't have to freaking do, Intrepid has to do. But again, I think at the end of the day, I trust Steven. I mean, he's a smart individual. He clearly knows what he wants for his game, and that's why I personally believe in him. He has a very firm direction and what he wants Ashes to be for the MMO community. And I think that's what a lot of other developers completely don't even have, a direction, like what they want from the game or what they want to do or what audience they want to even cater to. They're just like, whoever wants to play.
Player.
Yeah, it's just it's so terrible, dude. But again, I this is the question I ask to everybody is, why do you believe in Ashes? Like, why did you become a content creator for this game, and why are you so excited about a game that's not even out yet?
So it comes down to my first exposure to Ashes of Creation was the Lazy Peon video. He very eloquently described and showcased the ambition that this project holds, and the ambition of the systems, the ambition of, you know, like we've talked about, the 64 classes, the node system, the refreshing of the world, the dynamic world, the massive, like their ultimate goal is 500 v 500 castle siege battles.
We haven't talked about that. Jesus.
Yeah, the ambition of the project is the number one cause for concern for a lot of people. I remember because I specifically was watching Asmongold when he was watching the Lazy Peon video, and I remember
that's how I found out.
Yeah, McConnell was like, that's too much. There's no way they can't do it. And I have the opposite reaction. I say, yes, finally someone is dreaming big. Finally someone wants to move the needle. Finally someone wants to really realize the MMORPG genre and the game of the MMORPG in the way that they need to really encapsulate that feeling that WoW, in my opinion, when it launched, dabbled on. It didn't hit everything that it needs to. And you can see that in the ambitious systems that they have. So for me personally, I've wanted to be a content creator in some fashion for a long time. It's something I've talked about with my friends a lot. And finally, a project that has the ambition, I wanted to match that ambition and, you know, start my own channel from scratch and rely on the dreaded YouTube algorithm to have my work, you know, maybe reach the audiences that would, you know, enjoy watching me talk about random shenanigans and, you know, my humor, as wild as it can get sometimes. So just the ambition of the project is what we need out of a game, and specifically a game for the MMORPG genre. And I'm super excited. Everything that Intrepid has showcased for me has not only met levels of my expectations, but has gone beyond levels of my expectation. I honestly wish they would hold less to the chest. I understand why they do it, especially, you know, with Steven being a marketing, that's his area of expertise. Like, I can, every time I watch a live stream, I'm just like, well, there's the marketing beat point. There's the marketing beat point. Can we get to the development side where Steven just starts talking out of his ears and just really actually gives us some super information?
Right.
You know, that's my favorite part of the streams, is when Steven gets to rant. And but every single time they showcase something, like the character creator, like, it was polished, it looked great, it was ambitious, it hit all the talking points that they've talked about. For example, like the improvements that they made on the dwarf, like there was a huge community feedback on the Alpha 1 first pass to what they look like now, like huge improvements on that. So just everything, every step of the way, I've been really enjoying the ride, and you know, living up, dreaming big. If they're going to dream big, I'm going to dream big. And that's what got me going finally on a little adventure that I've been wanting to do for a while. So,
and I hope with the Empyrean, they do a really good glow up for that, because that's the one race we have not seen. I mean, again, we saw the Empyrean in Alpha 1, but it wasn't updated yet. The new the new skin textures look freaking Cadillac looks so good, because it's just that you can see the pores, the eyelashes, it just looks insane. And I would love to see an Empyrean, you know, maybe, I don't know, maybe I'm slightly biased because I love the Blood Elves for World of Warcraft, but, you know, I would love, you know, something, you know, really beautiful, you know, but sculpted, you know, kind of Giga Chad kind of face, but, you know, But you know what I'm saying.
I sure think that's what you're getting, especially after we saw the Pyre,
Oh yeah,
like woodland stuff. Like, oh boy, like that. Like I brought up the Celtic Druid kind of vibes, and I'm like,
right.
that, and again, that's the ambition. They took like woodland elves, or because I believe they're more like, no, maybe the other elves are the woodland elves. But I mean the woodland, like
The
we're a
branchlers.
part of nature. Yeah. Like they took that and they took it to another level. And again,
Mhm.
like you said earlier, this is just the first pass that we've really seen on that next ambitious take.
Right.
Where are we going to be at when the Alpha 2 launches, you know? For the Renkai, like the Renkai, I think have like really blown up a huge amount. And I loved like your talk with Anduin, because brought up like the dragon elements and the scales, and I'm like, I actually see Dragonborn when I see the Renkai, and I'm like, man, that really gets me jazzed about what influences make them. And then of course we got the ghost in the back of the room, the Tolnar. What are we gonna see with Wild Race, man?
True.
Like I remember in the character creator live stream, like one of the developers they had like talking about it was just like, oh man, the Tolnar, like we haven't even really like touched on that type of stuff. And like, I don't know, I'm jazzed, man. I'm pumped.
No, it's
Full Hogan.
it's so much to be excited for, and I think that's why a lot of people can't hold back their excitement. They just want to release that passion onto YouTube and make this content and believe in something. I feel like that's what us MMO players have gotten so pessimistic, is we don't believe in anything anymore. We're so jaded that we're just pessimistic right off the start. We think everything's gonna fail. This is gonna be complete bull, you know, whatever. I've never liked to be negative. I've always been an optimistic person, but I needed the right project, and I feel like Ashes is definitely the project to put my optimism into. And because Steven reminds me a lot of myself. He's a nerd. He gets so excited with his passion, and it's intoxicating, because when you see someone genuinely excited, it's hard if you're empathetic to not get excited too, because you know it rubs off, you know. So, but dude, MeMatt, thank you so much, man, for having this chat with me. We need to have a part 2 for sure.
We didn't talk about enough.
We talked about like a small fraction, but that's how I feel at the end of every 1v1, because then I would have like an 8-hour podcast if we needed to go and talk about every single thing. But definitely when Alpha 2 comes out, I'll bring you back. We'll chat about everything, you know, as much as we can. But I feel like my 1v1s when Alpha 2 comes out are gonna be longer. Like, I think I'm gonna have to do a minimum of 2 hours, because we're just gonna have to get into so much. Like, it's gonna be ridiculous.
You know, you could always just narrow down your topics, and you know, have like I know I listen to a lot of podcasts. They have like their talking points right next to them. So you know, it's little chance to grow for I love the openness of your 1v1s. I love getting to know the community. I've gotten to know a lot of the community through them. So I think you're doing a stand-up job in that regard.
Oh, thanks, man.
And man, I just want the Alpha 2 to come here, man. Like, I know we've talked about it, I think,
Yes.
in the discussion, or at least in the Discord.
Right.
Like, I'm also on that like early Q1 for 2023.
Me too.
Like, being
sadly,
a real point for it to happen. You know, it may not happen. It may not come until like they may have to push it back. Like, the development process has gone, but it's like I said, a independent studio at the end of the day.
True.
Regardless of how many amazing, talented professionals that have worked on huge MMOs they have. That's the core of where they've started. Like the team that they have today actually reflects more of a AAA studio than the team that they've had throughout a lot of the steps of the process, especially from the Kickstarter.
True.
I wish I was there at the Kickstarter. I wish I was there to support the project, you know. But alas, it took the bald man to, you know, showcase the lazy peon.
Hey, I'm glad he did, because I would not have heard about Ashes of Creation if he didn't do that. To be totally honest, like I remember seeing the Chronicles of Illyria back in 2016 when I was in Legion for WoW, and I was just like, oh, that sounds cool, because it was like talking about like your character actually ages and it goes through like being young to old and then it dies, and it's just like, but we all know what happened with Chronicles of Valeria. But I mean, at the end of the day, MeMatt, thank you. Where can people find you? Do you have the Twitters, YouTubes? State it all, and it'll of course be in the bottom of the description.
Yes. Currently developing a lot. I just got on Twitter. It's going to be under MeMatt Online. I think it's at MeMatt Online. That's me on Twitter. You'll see my logo. My logo is it's pretty standard. It's got the purple and orange that I love. You know, unfortunately, my son did not show up recently. You know, that sunset is still there. Still chasing sunsets. But my YouTube is my name, MeMatt. You'll see it. And you know, I've had a few comments talk about like Discord and like a guild running when the game launches. I hadn't really planned that far ahead, so we'll see. Work in progress on those things. But I love interacting with my community on the comment section of my videos. So if you want to talk to me, if you want to yell at me, head down there, man. We'll have a philosophical discussion, and I'll enlighten you on some ways in life.
No, right. Dude, and honestly, like I'm gonna announce it now, even though it's nothing too big, but I mean, just as for the people that are, you know, really like fans of me, which is kind of weird to say out loud, but who just like my content and want to chill out with me, I've almost finished the process of making my Discord. MeMatt, you're actually in my Discord.
Yes.
And I am doing the final touches. Discord is very involved. There's a lot of stuff that I want to present in Discord, and I want it to be a good space, non-toxic, you know, just a chill place. People can come and hang out with me or hang out with a lot of the other content creators that I've met, so that way people can find a place that actually can see, oh, these are all the content creators for Ashes of Creation. I just feel like that would be a nice spot to do that at. So my Discord will definitely do that. I am going to launch my Discord when I hit 1,000 subs. So that's going to be the thing. So again, I still have plenty of time to do everything, but that's going to be it. 1,000 subs. Once I do that, I will release my Discord to everybody. So yeah, that's pretty much it. But MeMatt, dude, thank you so much again for doing this. I'm your host, Vlhadus. This is 1v1 Podcast, and we will both see you guys in the next one. Later, guys.
All right. Thanks for having me. Later, dudes.